You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
You're listening to the Holonet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. We have a lot to get into today. The immigration crisis has taken on a new form with the family separation debacle currently in play. First Lady Melania Trump is even now weighing in. We're going to talk about that, immigration in general, as a national issue, and the history of Father's Day, or, as I call it, the Patriarchy Day. Happy Patriarchy Day. All that and more here on the Holonet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
I will build a great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
The American people are frustrated because their elected officials don't listen. When we're home on the campaign trail, we say we listen. And yet something about this Senate floor, something about Washington, D.C., I don't know if it's the water, something in the air, the cherry blossom, but people get here and they stop listening to the American people.
What we witnessed here today in the Security Council is an insult. It won't be forgotten. It's one more example of the United Nations doing more harm than good in addressing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
My duty, and the sacred duty of every elected official in this chamber, is to defend Americans, to protect their safety, their families, their communities, and their right to the American dream. Because Americans are dreamers too.
I want the people of America to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom. Until we can reestablish a condition under which the earnings of the people can be kept by the people, we are bound to suffer a very severe and distinct curtailment of our liberty.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Senators, members of Congress, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. President. You had one damn job. Seriously.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is that time again. Welcome to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Actually not sounding like I'm choking on my own throat today, so I've gotten over my little bout that I went through last week. Thank you, everybody who expressed your concern. It was very touching. But we have to get right to it. We have to jump into it today because it is Patriarchy Day! Or at least that's what I'm calling it today for the sake of argument. Now, happy Father's Day to all of our fathers out there, especially the fathers who picked up the fumble that the previous player left behind and have carried that all the way through. So make sure you've called your father. If you got a single parent, you know, where they had to play both roles, make sure you give them some love as well. Father's Day is important. Father's Day, we recognize the significant beneficial impact that the masculine parental aspect, or the father, has on our lives. Fathers and mothers are equally crucial to the proper development of a balanced person. I've always believed this. I myself have been very fortunate to have several great men in my life play father figure and be father figures to me. You know, my own father, my grandfather, my stepfather. I've been blessed to learn so much from these men, and even after I married, from my father-in-law. So we have to recognize those men in our lives and the benefit of non-toxic masculinity. We hear that word thrown around all the time now. Toxic masculinity. Oh my God, your toxic masculinity is gonna contaminate our wonderful well-being. No. It's fathers who teach you to get up when you do a face plant. Tell you to brush it off. Who wipe the blood from your chin, dress the wound, and tell you to go back outside and play. Fathers get such an understated role today. It seems societally or socially, people are seeking to eliminate any benefit of fatherhood. Because it is politically incorrect to say that a father is necessary in a child's life. Well, here on the HoloNet Podcast, we're going to say it. Fathers are crucial. Fathers are critical and are needed every day. So today, we give thanks. And funny, Father's Day started initially as a religious observance in Catholic Europe. It was March 19th back then. St. Joseph's Day, since the Middle Ages. The celebration was brought by the Spanish and Portuguese to Latin America, where March 19th is still used for it. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? I was watching a video, I think it was from the Detroit News, of all places, where Pope Francis, who I don't agree with everything Pope Francis says, but Pope Francis caused a lot of people to want to bust out the tissues when he took an audience from several children, and a young boy named Emmanuel came up to him and couldn't find the words, he couldn't speak. So the Pope invited him up and gave him a hug, embraced him, and the kid spoke to the Pope directly off mic. And then the Pope explained that the boy's father had passed away recently, and the boy's father was an atheist. And he asked the Pope, would my father go to heaven, even though he was an atheist? Because even while he was an atheist, he had his 4 children baptized, and he was a good man. And I think the Pope, taking a large break from traditional Catholic dogma, hit the nail on the head, that the heart of God is the heart of a father. And that it's very, very easy for someone who believes to have their children baptized and raise them as Catholics. It's not very easy for someone who doesn't believe to do that. And that he was such a man and he had such courage that he taught his son Emmanuel, the courage to stand up to the Pope, one of the most influential religious leaders in the world, and ask, "My father was a good man, except he was an atheist. Will God block him from heaven?" That's brave. That's kind of, going straight to the man. Well, not straight to God. Can't do that till after you're dead. But going to the highest available authority in his faith and challenging the notion. And the Pope said that he believed God would welcome that man. And I needed a tissue after that one. Pope Francis, the socialist, and I don't agree on very much of anything, I don't think. I highly doubt we ever will. He's probably certainly not going to agree with my hot take on immigration this afternoon. But I suppose even a broken watch is right twice a day. So good move by His Holiness, the Pontifex himself, Pope Francis. Now, speaking of public figures making very public breaks with normal policy and procedural norms, the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, made some headlines today. She actually, seemingly out of nowhere, made a statement regarding the separation of families in the immigration debacle that has been taking place of late. Now, this is highly unusual for the ordinarily very quiet First Lady. Melania Trump has not been known to do this in the past, but go to AOL News for that. The statement read, "Mrs. Trump hates to see children separated from their families and hopes both sides of the aisle can finally come together to achieve successful immigration reform," according to a statement from her spokeswoman. She believes we need to be a country that follows all laws, but also a country that governs from the heart. How powerful is this from the First Lady of the United States, whose husband, the president, is one of the most ardent voices against illegal immigration and has posed some of the, I don't want to say harsh, but some of the strictest terms on illegal immigration in recent memory, and who is an immigrant herself, a legal immigrant to the United States, a naturalized citizen of the United States. Now, the immigration debacle affects many of us. Many people in our lives are touched by this. I myself have a friend and colleague who actually brought me to Lantern.us and the Lanterns Media Network, who was denied entry into the United States because he did not meet the criteria for a working visa or for the fields that they felt were appropriate. And that broke my heart in half. Because this is a man who loves this nation more than most Americans you meet will. But he was denied entry. And he hasn't sought to enter the United States illegally as a result. And there is, as I said, no one, I think, alive today who loves this nation more. Who loves America more. Hell, I'll just come right out with it. It's Jonathan Dunn. Freedom's disciple, none other than. You can check out his new contributor page off of glennbeck.com. Jonathan Dunn is a mighty patriot of the United States. A mighty American patriot. Comes here whenever he can, and it's very expensive to travel to and from Dublin, Ireland, to the U.S. I mean, I can't even get back east to visit family. I can't imagine how he gets out here from time to time. But he does, and he does great work. So it's very difficult when you're seeing somebody not being admitted to the United States who you want to be. When you're talking to that person and feeling that heartache with them. To not say, maybe we need to make immigration easier. Maybe we just need to let more people in. And maybe we should just forgive and forget on all these things. It's very easy to do that, but no. We're a nation of laws. We are also a nation of hearts and a nation of Judeo-Christian values, built upon the firm bedrock of those Judeo-Christian values. So there's your quandary. How do you act in a way that honors the heart and soul of man, but also upholds the law? We'll get into that on the other side of this quick break. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
I see people coming together not for divisiveness of party or for dichotomy of thought, but for unity in principle. In the principles that founded our nation, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, ladies and gentlemen, those principles are under the sternest attack that we have seen in many generations. It has become a crime in this nation nearly to express a difference in opinion from what is held by your party to be doctrine, from what is purported by the media to be truth. We have an opportunity to reach out to our fellow Americans regardless of their creed and regardless of their political inclinations, and unite as Americans, not as Republicans or as Democrats, as liberals or conservatives, but to unite around the principles that have guided this nation so well. I've covered a lot of stories, but the story that remains untold is the story of America in the 21st century, when we choose to turn back the tide against progressive socialism, when we choose to embrace the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, when we remember what it is to be Americans. And that principle will not die as long as there's one man, one woman, one child who looks defiantly into the night and says, I am free.
You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Incoming transmission.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm Matt Holloway from Phoenix, Arizona. If you want, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/HoloNet. We are live on Facebook right now if you want to join the conversation. You can also tweet at the HoloNet. Find us online at theholonet.com and holonet.lanterns.buzz. Real quick, wanted to take us to The Blaze, story about 7 hours old from Chris Enlow. Really awesome writer over at The Blaze. I read his work quite consistently. The story is, some say child detention centers are concentration camps, but the truth paints a much different picture. I have the image up here on screen for those of you on Facebook Live. It looks like an orphanage or like a hospital wing, and it's, doesn't look that bad. Chris Enlow writes, in light of the controversy surrounding Trump's zero-tolerance illegal immigration policy, many have accused the administration of operating policies similar to Nazi Germany, while others have outright compared child detention centers to concentration camps, which would be former GOP Chairman Michael Steele, who accused the Trump administration of operating at concentration camps. Sorry, Michael, but the Nazis did that, and FDR did that in World War II. Yeah, Japanese internment camps. You want to see what an American concentration camp looks like? Check out those pics. Manzanar, for example. There are a couple based here in Arizona. A couple monuments still stands to them here in the Grand Canyon State. This is where that happened. So, I digress. However, new details reveal life inside the detention centers to be the complete opposite of life inside German Nazi concentration camps. According to Breitbart, once accompanied minors who arrive in the U.S. with their parents or alone are placed in detention camps, they experience a standard of living higher than millions of American children who live in poverty. Breitbart reported 41,000 unaccompanied minors were placed in camps last year, which are operated by the Office of Refugee Settlement. Once there, data shows the federal government spends an average of $34,660 caring for each child on an annual basis of about $96 per day. Meanwhile, federal data shows there were more than 13 million American children living in poverty in 2016. That means they lived in a household where the annual income was $24,563 for a family of four or less, which equates to $68 per day. So, is it right for us to be separating parents from their children? Seems to be the question of the day, but I really think it is the height of hyperbole and a shameful display to compare the accommodations that these children are living in to concentration camps. When millions of children, and 20 years ago I might have qualified, are living on less than $36,000 per year. I grew up in central New Jersey. And $96 per day on a child? I think that figure would be in the $20 a day or potentially less for the kids living in Newark and Jersey City and Camden and the Oranges. Perth Amboy. Even my hometown, Carteret. That would be a substantial upgrade. But I digress. The big question is it morally, ethically acceptable for us to be separating families during immigration proceedings? And for clarification on that, we really do need to look to the law itself. And I actually read a nice breakdown of this a couple of days ago. I don't think I have it pulled up here, but I can post it into the comments later. Where the situation is that children are typically sent to reside with family members or friends of the family here in the United States, while their parents undergo an appeal to the immigration process where they are requesting asylum. So during those asylum proceedings, the children are usually remanded to the custody of a relative who is able to take care of them, because most illegal families who come to the United States do have family who they're looking to join here. That's just a fact. The trouble is, the typical process for an asylum request takes longer than 20 days. By law, 20 days is how long a child can be held at one of these intervening detention centers. That's how long you can do it. So, what we need is to centralize and build out a larger facility to accept and handle the influx of immigration from Mexico. You see, once upon a time, we had large-scale immigration depots in this country. On the East Coast, we had Ellis Island. On the West Coast, we had Angel Island. Both are filled with their own stories of heartbreak, as is any story of immigration, because not everyone gets in. But one thing that these sites had in common is that families were housed together in situ at the complex, at the depot. They were not admitted into the United States, by and large, to wait out a lengthy adjudication process. They were held in quarantine facilities at Ellis and Angel Island. What I would propose is that the best solution for keeping these families together in a humane fashion would be, once it is deemed safe and that these children are indeed with their parents and not with someone else against their will, because coyotes are a thing, and human smuggling is a thing that exists, and the sex slave trafficking rings of the South American and Central American and Mexican crime syndicates are definitely things which exist. Once it is determined that the child should be with their family and that they are in fact family, they can be housed together in the same place and not, I repeat, not released into the general population of the United States. No, but are quarantined in a large-scale immigration depot. Very similar in nation, although significantly upscaled from what was employed by the United States Immigration and Naturalization Services in the early 1900s at Ellis and Angel Islands, respectively. I nominate the city of San Diego, California, to be the location of said depot, right there at the border with Tijuana. There's a lot of property down there that could probably be bulldozed in any way. It's a very Democrat, strong state. It's a very liberal state, so they should understand eminent domain pretty damn well. And I think it would be a good idea just to probably bulldoze a couple of those neighborhoods just along Tijuana and San Diego there, and build a massive single port of entry for immigration from Mexico into the United States. Put it right there in San Diego. And here's a bonus. In San Diego, you have some of the largest military-industrial complex concentrated on the West Coast. And one of the biggest benefits and smartest ideas, I think, ever in the immigration history is inviting a fast track on immigration status to those men and women who wish to serve in the military. Fast track them. Take them from said immigration facility right there at the Tijuana-San Diego line, ship them straight to Coronado, get them in a uniform. You want to serve? You want to live in this country? Be prepared to serve it. We'll fast track you if you're willing to serve this nation. If you're not, then you'll be housed in the facility until such a time as your immigration status may be adjudicated. It will be a facility that would be filled with its own heartbreak, of course, because we must be selective. We must be merit-based in who we allow to live in our nation. And I think on the East Coast and the West Coast, maybe up in Washington for emigres coming down from Alaska, coming down from Canada and coming over from Asia. On the East Coast, heck, Ellis Island, as steeped in history as it is, I imagine there are probably some portions of South Jersey that could use some revitalization. Atlantic City, for example. Atlantic City is pretty much hell on earth now that the casinos have all gone. So let's put the other immigration depot in Atlantic City, the other one up in SeaTac, Seattle-Tacoma. So San Diego, SeaTac, Atlantic City, and maybe one in Texas, because we have to process those refugees from California somewhere. But I think that is the answer. The answer is building the big, beautiful border wall. Yes, we'll have the best walls. The best walls. Absolutely, you need to have the border wall. But the wall must have a door. And that door needs to lead to a facility where families can be housed together, where the process can be carried out, and where people are not catch and release, turned loose onto American streets where they can be lost in the shuffle, just like the mainstream media loves to point out. Take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into news of the week. A couple of things I just picked up out of the headlines. Read here, there's been an unfortunate shooting incident in New Jersey. We're going to talk about that very briefly, with an eye of what to look forward to this coming week. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Incoming transmission.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
On the Lanterns Media Network. We just lost Facebook Live video. We're going to try to get that back online for everybody who's watching online, but we are going to keep moving forward. Just when you thought it was safe here in Phoenix, Arizona, we have the Obama Foundation, which has launched its first Community Leadership Corps in Phoenix last weekend, a 6-month program designed to help young people bring about change in their communities. We go to ktarnews.com. It's exciting. The idea of building something from the ground up, said Brianna Combs, one of 35 young people chosen to participate in the program. During the 2-day training, participants 18 to 25 learned how to build an organizing framework and engage in dialogue within their communities. Over the next 6 months, they will use those skills to develop a project, recruit young people, and implement an action plan. So in other words, community intervention, community organizing, has come to Phoenix, courtesy of former President Obama. Gee, isn't that a thrill? I, for one, am not really looking forward to seeing the fruits of those labors. I am looking forward to seeing the return of true conservative dialogue here in the greater Phoenix metro, and for that reason, we're trying to move ahead with the HoloNet Radio, and if you're interested in checking that out, you can log on to patreon.com/HoloNet, and you can be a part of HoloNet Radio as we seek to bring true dialogue and conversation back to the political sphere, back to the airwaves here in Phoenix. There has been, unfortunately, a bit of a want of a millennial conservative perspective, and we aim to help there. So again, that's patreon.com/HoloNet to counterbalance the Obama Foundation launching their community organization initiative in Phoenix. So make sure you stick here on the HoloNet, theholonet.com, holonet.lanterns.buzz to get more information on that. People on Facebook Live, welcome back. Sorry we had some technical difficulties there, kicked us offline, but we are back and we are flapping free. Now, tell you a little story that isn't really about me. Now, we're going to jump across the pond to Angela Merkel. According to Bloomberg.com, Merkel at risk as the German coalition crisis enters a critical phase. Germany's crisis over migration policy enters a critical phase this week, with Chancellor Angela Merkel's political future on the line, and the ripples are already being felt across Europe. Now, if you remember in previous shows, we had discussed how the new AfD party, the basic answer to the conservative right wing, the far right wing in the U.S., has taken an active step in the German government. And Merkel recently met with members of her own Christian Democratic Union at party headquarters in Berlin to plan a response to an ultimatum sent by her Interior Minister, Horst Seehofer, to order immigrants be turned away from Germany's border, in direct contradiction of the Chancellor. Seehofer's party, one of 3 in Merkel's coalitions, is posed to hand Merkel a 2-week deadline to get a European deal facilitating the return of migrants to the countries where they first registered. The demand will be endorsed at a meeting of the Christian Social Union's executive in Munich on Monday, according to the Bild newspaper. Merkel must meanwhile decide whether to sack or fire, in the American lingual, Seehofer for insubordination, or risk a rift with her Bavarian sister party. The upshot is the worst crisis of her almost 13 years in office If the Bavarian CSU does not agree to any compromise on the policy, her current government may fall apart shortly. But they think that scenario is somewhat unlikely. Now, we've looked to German politics many times here on the HoloNet podcast, but really, we do have to seriously question how stable is the German government right now? How stable of an ally are they when Angela Merkel cannot seem to come to grips with the fact that her nation is in crisis because of her devil-may-care immigration policies? The policy of openness, of welcoming people from all over the world, is inherently destabilizing the German economy and the German socio-political fabric. She has failed to recognize this crisis, and now it is threatening to boil over in her face, as her own cabinet starts to turn against her. It's insane. We look to the Express from the UK. EU chaos. Merkel wants crunch migration talks as Germany verges on imploding over crisis. Paul Withers writes, German Chancellor Angela Merkel wants last-ditch talks with EU member states on migration policy before a leaders' summit at the end of the month, as the issue threatens to blow the country's political landscape apart. This is the struggle of our age. Nationalism versus multinationalism. Immigration, legal or no, refugee resettlement. This is the struggle of the 21st century. Here in the United States, though, we have an edge. We have a crucial tool that they do not have in the EU, and we have the Constitution of the United States of America, which outlines very clearly the government's responsibilities. One of those responsibilities is to safeguard our borders and to prevent criminality and to protect the lives, the properties, and the rights of American citizens. Now, a good friend of mine and a friend of the show, Chris Merrill, who of late has been hosting Kogo at Night on 600 Kogo in San Diego, had to throw that out there, he posed an interesting series of questions. He was questioning how we can simultaneously, on the right, tout absolutism on the border, while still considering ourselves Christian, right, and moral. And he really did set this up right. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the tweet here, because it really was a quite awesome tweet. Anyway, I'll pull it up in just a second. But Chris had a point here. Okay, I'm gonna have to pull this up at another time. But I really wanted to show that because it shows just the interesting dialogue fail that is happening in this country. We are completely losing the script with each other on what it means to be a conservative, what it means to be a Christian, and what it means to be an American citizen. Where, people uphold the Constitution. Here we go. I'm going to read this for you verbatim, just so I can get this right. Chris says, "Is it so wrong I love to see wingers," which he refers to as right-wingers, "get tied up in knots? This time it's about Einstein's diaries." Oh, wait, that's the wrong one. Okay, dang it. I may just have to call him and have him tell you. Possibly on next week's show. I'll see what he's doing. But Chris laid out, how can we... there it is. We shout out that our rights come from God, and then simultaneously uphold that illegal immigrants in the United States do not have rights under the Constitution. So that is a fallacy that trips up a lot of people, okay? Our rights do unequivocally come from God. our rights are protected by the Constitution of the United States. So as American citizens, we are entitled to the protections of the Constitution. All men and all women, all human beings, have these rights. They are inherent rights that come from God, that come from the Creator. And we acknowledge that those rights exist. However, their rights, the illegal immigrants, their rights are protected under a different set of documents. And we need to keep good track of that. That no, their rights are not protected under the Constitution of the United States because they are not American citizens. Their rights are protected respectively under the Constitution of their home nation, in this case, the United States of Mexico. That's actually the legal name of that country. Also under various treaties between the United States and their parent country, bilateral agreements pertaining to immigration. Also, international law applies, and United Nations compacts on immigration and naturalization apply. So, no, illegal immigrants from any country in the world do not benefit from the protections of the Constitution of the United States, and they cannot because they are not American citizens. What they do benefit from is the rights accorded to them by the United States under the relevant treaty law with their home country and the constitutional protections of their home country's constitution in reciprocity with the United States. That's it. So there is not some huge divide here between our rights coming from God and illegal immigrants not being protected under the Constitution. The Constitution does not give us rights. The Constitution merely codifies and protects those rights that it does. You also have to remember Article 10. Well, the 10th Amendment, rather. All rights not given, all powers not given to the federal government through enumeration are reserved to the states and the people. So the Constitution protects and upholds the rights of American citizens. Anybody else, you're covered under treaty law. That's it. That's it. That's why when you open your passport, on the first page, there is a statement, there is a request on the first page of the United States passport, or on the British passport, or on the Mexican passport, which is a message from either the head of state or the Department of State requesting that the authority you give your passport to offer you safe conduct through their country as you are a citizen. So, their constitution, if I go to Mexico, the Mexican Constitution and the rights that are protected in the Mexican Constitution does not apply to me. The rights and protections that apply to me are those that are afforded me by the Mexican government in accordance with their treaties with the United States. Which is why if you get in trouble in a foreign country, you say, I'm an American citizen, and you demand to speak to your embassy. Because they are the only people there who can fight for your rights. This is not that hard. Love Chris Merrill, but I don't see getting tripped up by that distinction. That our rights come from God, but illegal immigrants are not protected under the Constitution. Makes perfect sense to me. I don't have to jump through any mental hurdles or do any psychological gymnastics to make that work. It's two separate sets of laws. Anywho, wrapping things up, last 4 minutes. So I want to talk about what's trending. What's trending is Happy Father's Day 2018. Woo! Colombia, Iowa 250, Switzerland. Boy, man, there's really nothing good trending this weekend. Excuse me. Ivan Duque beats former guerrilla in order to secure Colombia's presidency. So there's a new president of Colombia. Look at that. Ivan Duque, a 41-year-old political newcomer, won Colombia's presidency Sunday, promising to revitalize the country's economy and overhaul a historic peace deal with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC. According to initial results, Duque beat Gustavo Petro, the leftist former mayor of Bogota, by more than 10 points. A U.S.-educated lawyer, Duque worked at the International Development Bank in Washington, D.C. before becoming a senator in 2014. A virtual unknown just a few years ago, he rose to prominence in support of former President Alvaro Uribe and his Centro Democrático political party. Wow. So it looks like we have something of a conservative taking control of Colombia. Hope it lasts. You want to talk about a country that needs some stabilizing. So next week, we're going to have to visit the South American nations, so to speak, and the political situation there. In the meanwhile, happy Father's Day. Happy Day of the Patriarchy. Where even some of the most ardent feminists out there will pause for a moment and realize that when they blow a tire, when something in the house breaks, when they get a bill they don't understand, or when something scary happens, sometimes you need to call your dad. So, in that case, from Phoenix, Arizona, I'm Matt Holloway. Happy Father's Day. Good night. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America. Good night, everybody.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.